friends, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I wanted to walk you through how it is that I label my individual single pans that are in a magnetic eyeshadow palette. So I've got a few here that I'm going to demonstrate what I have done or how I can do the labeling, and then a couple palettes to show you that are not able to be labeled that way. The pans themselves are not magnetic. So we'll walk through all of those. This video will probably be pretty short, but this is one that somebody requested a couple videos ago when I mentioned that I like to label my individual eyeshadow pans. So if this is something that you're looking into doing or that you've done, or if you have any tips or techniques to recommend to others, please feel free to include those in the comments. And that way we can all make the most out of what we already own. So the first thing to look at is whether or not the pans are magnetic. So to do that, I recommend getting one of these magnetic tools. It doesn't have to be anything specific. This one works well. You can also just get maybe a fridge magnet would work. There's a lot of options. I'll see if I can link something like this from Amazon down below for your ease of reference. But this is what I have been using. It's just a magnet on the end and it's telescopic, so you can pull it out. But for what we're doing here, there's really no need to do that. So the reason that this even came about was because I was talking about my Sydney Grace palettes. So Sydney Grace is known for their individual single eyeshadows, but they also have beautiful palettes. And with a lot of their palettes, almost all of them, the individual pans in the palette are magnetic and removable. So that means that I can take the eyeshadows out of this palette and either put them into their own palette. I can rearrange them within this palette. I can put different shades into this palette. But for me personally, I like to remain organized, and I'd like to know where all of these belong so that I know where to put them back. So let me show you how the magnet works. So it's really simple. I'm just going to take this tool and put it around the edge of one of those pans, and it pulls out just like that. Sometimes they can be a little bit more tricky to get out of the palette itself, in which case you might be able to just kind of push with a finger on the back, kind of bracing against the side. Don't need a lot of pressure because we're not trying to break the palette itself. Sometimes putting just a little bit of pressure on the back might help give the shadow the boost that you're looking for to get it out of the palette. So here's an example of a palette and of a pan that I've already done. So here on the back, you can see that I've labeled it Grape Nut, which is the name of the shade itself, and then TC for Tropicolor. So there's no magic to the labeling process. For me, the TC is enough to remember that it came from my Tropicolor palette. If you have a large number of palettes, maybe you want to do something a little more specific, like SG for Sydney Grace, TC for Tropicolor. But for my collection, this is what works for me. So you can see that the little label, all that it is these color coding labels. I honestly don't even remember where I picked this up, but you can find these at most convenience places, convenience stores, or maybe a craft supply place. So I'm thinking of like CVS or Walgreens or Walmart or Target, or even Amazon, and I'll see if I can link something like this below as well. So you've got your label, you've got your pen, and then since these are already magnetic, there's nothing more to do than to just, I like to wipe down the back, make sure that there's no excess product on the back, and then just stick the sticker on. And then I can go back to my palette, drop it right back in there. Or if I wanted to move it around to a different palette or put a different shade back in here, then I know where this particular pan belongs. So some examples of some palettes that I've already done this for. I've done this for my Tropicolor, for all of my Sydney Grace palettes, except the Enduring Love palette. I don't believe I was able to get all those pans out, but those are square pans. It's a little bit different kind of palette for Sydney Grace, but pretty much all of their other palettes work in this same fashion. I've got a palette from What's Up Beauty that these are magnetic, and so I was able to, if it'll twist around, I was able to name all of those shades. I've got the Citrus Punch palette from Simply Posh Cosmetics. And these you can see too, the brand has put these little notches in the side of the palette where the pans belong so that it makes it that much easier to pull out each pan. So those are all labeled. I also have this little palette from Lethal Cosmetics, and I was able to pop these out. Sorry, hard to hold them upside down. I was able to pop these out and name them as well. So this is LC just for Lethal Cosmetics because this is my only Lethal palette. I wanted to give you an example real quick as well of just what an empty magnetic palette could look like so that you can put shades from existing palettes into a magnetic palette. Or like I said, you can just rearrange what's in all of these palettes. So because the Simply Posh, Citrus Punch, and the Tropicolor palettes are the same size, the little circle pans are the same size, I could easily just switch up the colors that are in these two palettes. And again, just to give you some context, not all palettes have these magnetic removable pans. So a couple of the examples in my collection include this trash palette from Sugar Drizzle, which is such a fun palette. But these shades do not pop out. They're not magnetic. I believe that means they're glued to the palette itself. So that's fine. That just means that I'm not able to switch these around with any other palettes in my collection. And same with my Blend Bunny Surge palette. These are not magnetic as well. And let me just show you. So mostly I figured that out just by testing, by pulling the magnet over the side of the pan, and whether it pulls up or not lets me know whether or not I can remove them. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you to the individual who suggested this video idea. I hope that this was helpful. If you have specific questions or, like I said, any other tips or tricks, feel free to include those in the comments down below. I know we like to share thoughts and share ideas around the beauty space. And if you have any additional ideas or concepts on what you'd like me to show in a video, I would be happy to do that. So thank you for being here today, and we'll talk soon.